Well, here we are, Calgary Marathon, 30 years in the making. You know, it's a nice, fresh morning. I'm pretty excited. Kind of had a short sleep, shorter than I think I'd like, but hey, I'm ready to go. Feeling pretty calm and peaceful, and exactly, I think, right where I want to be as we get started. So we'll check in with you when I get back to the end. See you later. A year ago, I thought marathon runners were a different breed. Genetically gifted, Instagram lean, born for it. I'm not any of that. I'm a 57-year-old dad and grandfather and husband. I built multiple businesses and I currently operate 3. And I'm a guy who about 1 year ago just decided to train for something that I wasn't sure I could finish. A few weeks ago, I did it. I ran my first full marathon. This episode is for the me from a year ago, the curious newbie version of you who's wondering if this is even possible or worth it or just plain crazy. I'm not here to sell running. I'm here to share what I actually learned, what it feels like, what I got right, what I screwed up, and what I'd tell you if we had coffee right after my race. I'm not a lifelong runner. I started this from scratch. In fact, 2 years ago, I was 40 pounds heavier than I am right now, and my first run was me going about 3 minutes and then walking. I did that for a few weeks, gradually getting longer at the running part. I had to figure out training, nutrition, recovery, all while balancing work, running 3 companies, family, and the occasional setback. Debilitating knee pain, hyaluronic acid injections in my knee, ART, rolling, motivation dips, and wondering if I was delusional. So what you're getting today isn't from the guy who runs a 3-hour marathon. It's from the guy who finished one. With a decent time, a full heart, and a lot of insights I wish I had before I started. Okay, here's a few of the tips that I would start with. Get a Garmin or some type of running watch. I tell you, I'm sure Apple Watch is good, but just knowing, having the pacing, having my heart rate, once I learned about that stuff and understanding how far I would go in a particular training run, but more importantly, the pacing really, I think. And hey, the Garmin also connects my Spotify, so I didn't have to carry my phone around on a lot of my things. I would use ChatGPT for the training plan. I first started with Garmin as my training one, and I ran about 3/4 of the training plan. So first step was I did a half marathon about 4 months or so after I said I was going to do this. And then I ran the full marathon about 6 months and a bit from the half marathon. So I used Garmin for the whole half marathon training plan. So I just used the Garmin coaching plans for the full marathon training plan. About 3/4 of the way through my Garmin full marathon training plan, I started listening and watching YouTube and watching some of the people that I guess teach this kind of stuff. And I started to realize that my training runs were supposed to be zone 2. They were supposed to be at easy pace. They were supposed to be conversational pace. But for some reason, Garmin on their coaching plans had me at marathon pace, like my marathon goal pace through all of my easy runs. So I look at it as saying, I think they worked me too hard. I actually got injured. I think I overtrained. Maybe that's not going to be the case for you, but I've certainly learned from there. So now, about the last quarter of my training plan for the full marathon, I used ChatGPT. And you know what? It was good because I could tell it how I felt. I could tell ChatGPT what my recoveries felt like. I could give them the stats from my sleep and my Garmin, and they could adjust the training plan on the fly. But most importantly, they gave me better pacing for my easy runs, which I think made me stronger and built my aerobic engine. So you can also buy training plans off of a coach or somebody, one of the experts online. I didn't do that, but I know that they're available. So yeah, the next piece, get good shoes. So for my half marathon, I use these shoes on running. I didn't know anything about shoes. I should have probably watched a bunch of YouTube videos because after I bought them all, I started to watch some of those things and I learned. But these were expensive shoes actually, and good thing I'm not sponsored by On, but they were terrible. I ran the half marathon with these and a lot of my training going into the half marathon with these. And at the end of my half marathon, which my half marathon time was 2 hours and 18 minutes, not stunning, not stellar, but hey, 4 or 5 months after I decided I was going to try to run a marathon, that's not bad. But afterwards, oh man, my toes, I had 3 toes on my one foot and 2 toes on my other foot, completely mangled, black toe. So these didn't work well for me. The ones I'm wearing right now, I love for my easy runs, and they're Nike Invincible Run 3. Cushioning is amazing. It feels great. I could do a 2-hour training run, which is similar to what I would have done in a half. No feet problems, no pains, no nothing. Significantly good idea. I'm in Canada. These were 200 and some. 230, I can't remember. So, I mean, yeah, these shoes aren't cheap, but do not cheap out on shoes because you don't want to have your feet mangled and you don't want to be getting feet blisters and sore while you're doing your training because it'll hinder the training, but certainly on race day, it also would. For race day, I chose these. These are the Nike Vaporfly 3s. They were the super shoe a couple, 3 years ago. I love these shoes. They're carbon plated. I use them for my speed workout sessions too. I mean, look at me, I'm not a sprinter. I'm not built for running fast. Well, at the beginning, I wasn't built for running at all, but these helped. I could run faster. I don't know, they're light, they're airy, carbon plated. So I use these for my thresholds and my tempo and my speed runs during training. And I use these on race day and they were great, performed really, really well. The next piece is to learn about fueling. Going into the half marathon, didn't think of it, didn't know anything about fueling. I didn't fuel at all during my 2-hour, 18-minute half marathon. I did run the whole thing without walking, but I was gassed. In fact, I remember now, I was probably more tired and sore than I was after the marathon, and fueling was the difference. So from my half marathon, which was in October, to my full marathon, I ran the Calgary Marathon at the end of May. So what's that? 6, 7 months. I started to really get serious and I learned about fueling. And so my favorite go-to fueling sources, so BPN, the G1M Sport. Now, this, if you're in the United States, this is super accessible and great for you to get, but it's a carb and electrolyte formula. I would, particularly on morning runs, I did almost all of my training runs in the morning, which is what I recommend, by the way. You're freshest, get the run out of the way so that I still could get my work going. And if something happened at work, I didn't sabotage my training runs at the end. So getting up and doing my training runs in the morning, game changer, seriously important. I actually moved my strength training and my lifting to the afternoon. And so therefore, if I got tied up and my strength training took a hit, I was okay with that, but I did not want to have my training runs take a hit. So getting up in the morning, I'd have 2 scoops of G1M Sport, which ends up giving me about 160 calories, most importantly, 40 grams of carbs. But I would often have this with maybe a little packet of high protein Quaker oatmeal and a half a banana, something like that, or a piece of sourdough toast and some honey. Light, light, light. But man, I learned that during training, the fueling was a game changer. Like I ran better training runs. If I moved my training run, which I did 1% of the time, but if I did it in the afternoon or in the evening, well, now I've had a full day of eating. I've had a full day of work. My energy levels are lower, not recommended, but it's harder to fuel because I've had breakfast, I've had lunch. I got to time this in between because you don't want to go on a training run when you're full or anything like that. Then I also learned about in-race fueling and the gels. So I used mostly GU gels, and I also used BPN's Go gels. And if you're in Canada, BPN is a little bit more expensive because I got to ship it from Texas, but I just like their products. More importantly, I started to follow them while I was learning, and I just loved them and I wanted to support them. So that's what worked for me. During training, I used these a lot to help me on longer training runs. You know, anything that was over a 45-minute or so, because the pre-workout would get me at least 30 to 40 minutes. Any runs that were longer than 40 minutes got another gel. And during training, I ran about 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes, and then take a gel. Each gel, these are both about the same, 100 calories, but most importantly, the Go Gel is 24 grams of carbohydrates, and the GU gel was 23 and 24. So pretty much the same. No fiber. Don't want to have any bathroom emergencies during training and runs, which, by the way, prep for that because it does happen. I had 2 of them. Serious GI distress on long training runs. No good. But it does happen, so be ready for that. And the sodium. So this one, sodium, GU doesn't tell you how much. Oh yeah, 55 milligrams. And this one is 110. So this one during race day, much better, particularly if it's hot. During race day, I don't have them with me, but I chose to take some salt tablets, salt capsules. It wasn't overly hot on marathon day, but it was starting on the second half of the marathon. So I popped a couple of salt tablets at mile 10 and mile 20, just to help make sure I could stave off any cramps, but there was sodium in here. So during race day, my stretch goal was a 4-hour break, 4 hours, which meant that I was going to take these every 30 minutes, which I then stocked up with 9 gels. I only ended up using 8. I started to feel a tinge of a GI distress on mile 23 or 4, and I was worried about taking another gel, which, by the way, I should have done. But I didn't because I was worried about a GI distress, bathroom emergency, but I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, during the race, gels, game changer. A couple of people that I think were really important for me. Jonah Rosner, you can find him on Substack. He just had a lot of science-based insights on training. I thought it was great. I think he's on Instagram, probably on YouTube as well. I didn't see him there, but I read his content on Substack. Nick Bare, who's the founder and CEO of BPN, he's got a fantastic channel. That's BARE. I did follow BPN, but mostly Nick Bare. In fact, the very first time I just opened up YouTube to say something about running or something like that, he was the first video I saw. I watched it. I was hooked. I've watched, oh man, got to be 100 videos from him. The content is fantastic, very helpful. I recommend that a lot. Another piece is get a foam roller and use it. This particular one you graduate into, it's quite hard. There's no give and there's some knobbies on it. I don't have my other one, but it's just the smooth ones. If you're not been a roller, start with the smooth one and you graduate up into the knobby 4-wheel drive one. But game changer. I didn't learn this until late in my training, but I developed a patellofemoral syndrome, which is a runner's knee. 3 weeks out from the marathon, I was panic mode because I couldn't walk downstairs. If you know anything about patellofemoral syndrome, which is pretty common from overtraining, frankly, Garmin, if you know anything about that, it's under load, like when you try to go downstairs, like you bend your knee under flexion and load, woof, you hit the ground, or could hit the ground. Intense pain. And so my last week of peak, I couldn't do anything. And so I went to ART, I did all of that, but he told me, my ART doctor told me, you gotta roll. And so I started rolling and it changed everything. And so now I do not skip. I roll about once every 2 days. I'm 57. I'm sore. I've got to get some things, and the rolling, super key. Patellofemoral syndrome and other knee pain syndromes for older athletes comes from an imbalance in the quad muscles. And so rolling them just smashes all that stuff down and gets them all firing in the right way. Game changer. Might be the most important thing you take out of this whole video. Foam rolling, do it all the time. Also, don't skip leg day. I know. Everybody's like, don't skip leg day. But I think that today's hybrid athlete prioritizes strength training and running, endurance running. That's what I'm doing. And as an inspired founder, running 3 companies and prioritizing that kind of training, Once in a while, I skipped leg day. My legs are sore because of, doing a long run, doing a speed session. I was often very sore after a speed session because I'm just not a sprinter and I don't run at a high pace. And so I would give myself the excuse to skip leg day. Don't do that. As it relates in the actual run, my legs gave out before my heart and my aerobic balance. My engine had tons of capacity, but my legs didn't. For my next build, I'm going to hit legs a lot more. I need to strengthen my legs. I need my legs to carry me on the last 5 miles that don't give out, which they did. Use a treadmill. Everything's fine. I lamented over, people would say to me, oh, a treadmill's too easy to run. It doesn't mimic being outdoors on a training run. Well, some of that is true. What I did benefit from a treadmill is I live in Canada and I was training through the winter. And hey, listen, I know lots of you that are say, hey, go ahead, run in the cold and when it's snowy. And I didn't want to all the time. I live in Calgary, Alberta. So, oftentimes we get Chinooks or we get some warm days and I would run during the winter. But if it was a nasty day, I just decided to run indoors. Also, in the early days of training, I had trouble, especially because Garmin was whipping me and overtraining, but I had trouble holding my paces during threshold days. So if I had three segments at 8 minutes at, a much higher than marathon pace, I had trouble holding that for 8 minutes. I'd gassed. Now this has also helped my mental game, but if I was out running, I could stop or I could slow down. But if I'm on a treadmill, you stop or slow down, you're getting spit out the back end. So it did help me hold paces during speed workouts. And I think that was important. You can, and I did this, you can move the incline and on longer runs. When I chose to do a long run on a treadmill, I think the longest run I ever did was a couple of hours. I would then about every 20 minutes change the incline. So 0, 0.5, 1, 0.50, 0.51, so every 20 minutes or so. So it would mimic some of that rolling hills and some of that. And that did help. And the other thing I liked about a treadmill was I was able to put on my iPad and my AirPods and watch YouTube and do the thing I really like doing, or watch sports highlights or watch a game or watch something, so that it was stacking those benefits. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So I learned about pacing during the run. I chose to do, Garmin has a program called Pace Pro, and I chose to do a negative split on Pace Pro. So I think it was helpful. There's also pace runners during a marathon. They're super important. And I think it's really, really important to do that. I found the negative split, which means that I run slower in the beginning part of the race to conserve energy, and you run a little bit faster in the latter part of the race. So my stretch goal was 4 hours, in which case I needed to run a 9:05 minute per mile pace. I don't know what that is in kilometers. I know I'm in Canada, but I've always just done it in miles because all of the gurus and all of the influencers that I learned from, they're all in the US, it seems, so they do that. So I learned that way. That meant the beginning of the first half of the marathon, I was running a 9:30, 9:25, 9:20, 9:15. It would just slowly get faster, which was good. I did conserve a lot of energy. I made it, my pain cave and the wall hit on mile 21, whereas my experienced runners told me that it often, particularly for a first timer, hits on mile 18 or 20. And so I made it through all the way to mile 21. So that was really good. And I think it was the pacing that did that for me. And so learning about pacing, especially during training runs, super important. So stack fun things like podcasts and YouTubes to help motivate you when you don't want to run. So that, I already sort of touched on this, where I would, on my treadmill, I'd put my YouTube on. I loved it because then it was like, oh, I'm going to go run because I get to watch YouTube. I get to watch something that I want to watch, or I'm going to go on a long training run or, a run, and I can listen to a podcast. Because I generally, on other parts of my day, don't typically make time for those types of things, but I enjoy doing them. So now if I can put those with the running, it helped motivate me to get me out and do the runs. Okay, last one. This was super important. This helped me immensely. create 3 goals, an A goal, a B goal, and a C goal. In my case, first time marathon, I set my A goal to break 4 hours. I had done my half marathon at a 2:18, so technically speaking, if I just ran same pace, I would have been 4:40. So I thought that was a pretty good stretch. My B goal was to beat 4:15, and my C goal was to finish, but finish running the whole thing. I did not want to walk once. Now, I did have to stop for a pee break, which I lost 2 minutes on, so that's something else to consider. I think that it helped me because I was at about mile 12 or 13 when I realized I'm not going to make the A goal. Like, I knew my pace was too far off. In order for me to make the A goal on mile 14, I had to significantly increase my pace, which I just didn't have it. So if all I had was that one goal, now the rest of the run, I'm suffering more because I'm not going to make it. But I had my B goal. The B goal is realistic, and the C goal is just make it, just finish, whatever it is for you. And that was a game changer because I was still on for my B goal. In fact, early on in the race, I kept an eye on the pace runners. And the pace runners for the 4 hour and 4:05 and 4:10, they got ahead of me because they were running, I think their strategy was a flat pace the whole race, not a negative split. I'm going to do more thinking about that, whether I'm going to do that next time. But the 4:15 pace runner, I passed him early on, which I guess tells me that he was running a negative split because I passed him very early. And so I had the confidence of knowing when I knew that my A goal was out of reach. My B goal was 4:15, and the guy, my 4:15 pace runner, was behind me. I knew that. I didn't know how far behind me, but I knew he was behind me. And so, funny story, my end run, I finished at a 4:14. So I beat my B goal, my realistic goal. And remember I said the 4:15 pacer was behind me? Funny story. On mile 24, all of a sudden, I mean, this was a wide road, but he came right to me, and I looked over, and it's the 4:15 pace guy with 2 miles remaining. I'm like, oh shit, this is the guy. And so I pushed that last 2 miles. I'm like, whatever I do, I'm going to keep this guy behind me. He would edge up ahead of me for a bit, and then I would turn on the jets. And my strategy was going to be keep him at least within grabbing distance or something, and then send it on the last half mile or the last quarter mile, whatever I needed to do. Luckily for me, I don't know, maybe he was monitoring his pace, I don't know, but I was able to kind of pick up my pace. I finished strong in the last 2 miles, actually. Where I really lost the race was mile 21 to mile 24. That was the pain cave for me. And anyway, so I beat him. I crossed the finish line. I was ahead of the 4:15 guy. Yes, made my B goal. And one last thing I forgot. Carb loading is fun. It is awesome. For 3 days leading up to the race, learned this again on YouTube and from experts, I was eating 400 to scaling to 600 grams of carbs. Carb loading is hilariously fun. I was really good. So there's the tips that I learned running my first marathon. Running a marathon didn't change my life in some big dramatic way, but it changed something inside me. I proved to myself that I could commit to something uncomfortable for months and see it through. This part isn't too new for me, but how I stayed committed definitely changed, and this meant the world to me. I learned how to stay calm when things hurt, how to fuel when I didn't want to eat, how to hold a pace when everything inside me was screaming to slow down. I also learned peace. It can live inside of effort, even in the last few miles. So if you're thinking about running your first marathon, not just to post about it, but to experience it, this is your sign. You're here. You just listened to me do that. I've decided I'm going to do it again. And I also decided that I'm going to try and tackle a high rocks next. I have the same feeling I did when I decided to run a marathon. It's going to be really hard, but I get to do it with my 2 sons, and that means the world to me. That's the real motivator for me. Stay tuned here as I am going to document some of my journey to break my next goal, the stretch goal, in my half marathon. I'm going to do a half marathon in 3 or 4 months. And I'm going to break my goal in a full marathon that I'm going to do next spring. So I'm going to do a half marathon in October. I'm going to do High Rocks in November, and I'm going to do another full marathon in the spring. And I'm going to try and do it at a decent time in my High Rocks in my first time. Remember, don't say I don't have time to train. I think whenever I say I don't have time, or if I say I can't afford that, it's a lie. I'm telling myself so that I don't have to do the hard work that I have to do in order to get what I say I want in my life. I decided a few years ago that I was no longer going to sacrifice everything to build successful businesses and grind my soul while doing it. I decided to buy back my time, invest in more people, invest in more resources so that I could run those businesses with less time from me, so that I could prioritize my training and my health, and so that the last third of my life is full of vitality, mobility, free of disease and sickness, and having a great cash flowing businesses that finance a full and joyous life. You can do that too. All you have to do is start. You don't have to crush it, you just have to cross it. Subscribe below on this channel to follow my journey of creating peace in my body, my mind, and my heart, all the while running successful businesses at the same time. I'll see you at the finish line. Well, we made it. First marathon. Man, what a great experience. I really recommend this for anybody. I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, it's been 30 years in the making, as I talked about, but that last 10K was where really I don't know, some real peace came over me. I met that pain with grace and ease instead of whipping it like a donkey, and it was good. I'm proud of myself. I did it. And honestly, I'll have more thoughts to say afterwards, but I'm just really grateful for the experience. I never thought I was going to get here. So here we are. No joke, it's hard. It's way more than I imagined, I think. Maybe not, I don't know. But I mean, I really didn't know what to imagine, but kudos to everybody who can do that. It's really good. Thanks for watching, and thanks for coming along on that journey with me.